When did you lose your virginity?
Well, actually, it's cannot start at that point. Cannot start at that point.
Go
It
for
has
it.
to it has to go back to the beginning, because as everything from that, from the beginning to that, which is to meeting my wife, it all holds together as one continuous story.
Of course.
Because my romantic life, can't really say it was my sex life. My romantic life began when I was 5 years old. So what happened was I was in kindergarten, remember it clearly, and I had a friend in my class, a girl. How I had a girl for a friend, I'll never know. Nadine Miller, who died, unfortunately, when she was 10 years old of leukemia. Anyway, she lived right around the corner from me. And one day, I don't know, after school, whatever, I went over to Nadine's house. And there was a girl there who wasn't in our kindergarten class. Nadine and I were in the same class. And it was just a coup de foudre. It was just, love at first sight. Me and Sherry Dubner. And so we were all playing in the basement all innocently. And then at one point, I remember this clearly, Sherry and I went into a closet in the basement and we kissed. I remembered it so clearly, yet it's also improbable. I'm 5 years old. First off, how do I even know what kissing is? I'm 5. This was 1957, maybe 58, maybe I was 6. Anyway, but I remember this clearly. And this was the beginning. Sherry then became my longest relationship after my marriage. She was my girlfriend from kindergarten through 6th grade. Even my first marriage, I think it was longer than my first marriage. But, of course, when you remember something as clearly as kissing Sherry Dub closet in a basement, who knows what the truth is? And it was just last year, in fact, that Sherry got in touch with my brother, because I'm not on Facebook, through Facebook, asking if I was coming to our 50th class reunion, high school class reunion. So we got in touch with each other and we spoke. So I hadn't seen her in 50 years. And so I said to her, look, Sherry, this is really risky. I said, this is the end of the conversation, because I'm going to test my memory. I remember this story so clearly. Tell me if it really happened. Did you and I really kiss in Nadine Miller's basement? And she said, I told Nadine she needed to get out of the way so the two of us could be alone together.
Oh, 5 years old.
5 years old. She was such a vixen. So, but so we were like faithful to each other, more or less. I mean, I had my flings when I was like 8, where I went like bowling with Arlene Lightstein because she was really pretty. But anyway, but I just wanted to hit the highlights that get to your question and then beyond to the marriage. So Sherry was my girlfriend all through junior high school, through elementary school, and a little bit into junior high school because she was at my bar mitzvah. Anyway, but I was unhappy, and then when things weren't working out, like what were we doing? This was the 60s in the bowels of Brooklyn. Don't be confused that sex and stuff, reached the outer reaches of Brooklyn. We might as well have been in Kansas. And so then when I was in high school, my best friend was dating a girl who had a younger sister, Harriet. I have to say it, Harriet Goldberg. So they introduced us, and Harriet and I started dating. And I think that, like, in all my life, of all that I've been through, nobody did me more damage than Harriet Goldberg did in the years we dated. Okay, because Harriet, we dated, and it was an era where you got the first base, second base, third base. It was all very, very limited. And in fact, this was 1968, 69. The height of the 60s, I didn't know anybody that was having sex. Nobody, much less me. And and Harriet would, we would be making out in her parents' basement, and listening to the White Album, and everything would get all hot and heavy. And I could make it to third base, and then shut down. And I don't have to tell you how painful experience that can be. And I had to walk home a mile afterwards. I can still remember the pain of doing that. But I dated Harriet, I don't know, 2 years, maybe 3 years. And never, ever, ever did we have sex. It was just, and it just completely destroyed me because it destroyed my confidence. It destroyed my belief. You know, it would have to be like only with divine intervention was it going to happen that I would ever have sex. But recently, though, it got me to thinking. So, like I said, nobody I knew was having sex. There was like 1 or 2 couples that talked about it, but people weren't. They just weren't in our end of Brooklyn. And it got me to thinking that it actually, my experience was not, you know, I wasn't the only one living this way. Total frustration. You know, you're with somebody, you find her attractive, it's natural. Nope, shut off. And I got to thinking, Jeffrey Epstein was my age, and he grew up just a little bit west of me. Harvey Weinstein is my age, and he grew up also out of borough. He grew up in Queens. And I got to thinking that these were guys who probably, like me, were deprived of, you know, what everybody wants, and probably never recovered from it. And so, like Epstein, it really strikes me that, you know, he liked young girls. And it was because, I think, we'll never know, when he was 16, he wasn't getting any 16-year-olds. So now, of course, I didn't go in that direction. So nevertheless, so Harriet just completely destroyed me. So that even when I would meet girls and it seemed like it was going to happen, it didn't happen. Because I was just so used to being shut down that it just didn't happen. Okay. And so you asked, like, when it first finally happened, but, you know, I have to say this with like no pride or shame. It wasn't until when I was 20 years old, I was a park ranger. I even have the Smokey the Bear hat behind me somewhere that I wore. And what it was, I was in Virginia. I was in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. And this was the first time, since my parents didn't allow me to go away to college, which I think I mentioned before, this was my first chance away from home. And not only was I away from home, you can't be more exotic than a New York Jew in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. And so, you know, and I worked in a campground, and I worked the night shift in the campground. And interestingly, Mitch, why did you work the night shift? And I was there from 4 o'clock to midnight. Why? Because I was a Jew. No, it wasn't to penalize me. It was because whoever worked till midnight had to do the accounts for the day.
Right.
You know, how much was paid by all the, you know, all the campers and everything. So who else? Who better to do it than a Jew? But what it also meant was I worked in a very busy campground, Big Meadows. And I would walk around the campground, and, you know, of course, it was a pretty girl, you know, what the hell? So, or they would come to me because, you know, if you're from Ashtabula, Ohio, you know, Brooklyn, I mean, I was carrying more, you know, I was much more than I really was because I represented something. And that was what happened. There was a girl from Ashtabula who hung around my ranger station, and she was there at the end of the day, and she said, and I had to lock it up, and she took the key away from me, and she dropped it down her pants. And I said, well, could I have the key back? She said, no. I said, listen, I need to lock up the ranger station. I need my key. Give me the key back. She said, you'll have to go and get it. But I died and God to heaven. So she said, so I said, oh, listen, if I have to, I'm going to do it because I need that key. She said, okay, I'll give it to you, but on one condition. Tell me where you live. So Rangers had housing on the camp in the mountains. I said, okay, I'll tell you where I live, and I'm off in the morning. And so if you want to come to visit me, I can't believe I said this, but I know I said it. So if you're going to come to visit me, it better be for good reason. And there's only one reason that's good reason. I can't believe I was such a prick, but I was. And she came. And what was fun about the story was later that day, there was this older couple who were like volunteers in the park. And after, I can't remember her name. After she left, I walked out of my cabin And I was like the cock of the walk. And so the husband and this older couple said, somebody looks like something good just happened. So there was my first, anyway, so I have pictures of me as a ranger. And it's okay. So then I went into like a really down period. I think I mentioned the story about the girl that I fell in love with and all that. Okay. So I had like I went out with a bunch of women, nothing ever worked out. And I got to be like really down and angry and ugly about the whole topic. And then I had a really good friend, and we used to go, male friend, and we used to go to the ballet and opera and everything together all the time. I didn't know that he was like so nice to be with me because he laid come on to me, and I was like, I thought he was just kidding, but he wasn't actually. Anyway, we go to ballet all the time, and I love ballet. It was just great to watch. And I said, you know what, if I really want to understand ballet, the best way to do it is to take ballet. So I signed up for ballet class. So, and number one, of course, it was also, I was 25 years old, 24. It was a great way to see semi-clad women, but I really did want to learn ballet. Well, I worked with a woman, married woman named Genevieve, and I knew from our conversation that she had once taken ballet. So I asked her, I said, I'm taking ballet lessons. Maybe you want to do it again, start up again. So we started taking ballet lessons together. First, we used to just dance at lunch hour, doing basic stuff, pliés and all that stuff. And then we started taking ballet lessons together. And we had great fun. She had a car. We would drive into the city. She'd park around the corner from the ballet school. And we just had great fun. And then we started having such great fun that we would get to ballet school and say, you know what, let's just take a stroll. And let's go out for dinner. And it was great fun. She was married, but her husband was opening a business someplace else. So she was living with her in-laws. And then one day I just noticed something different, something had changed in the atmosphere. And so one night we're coming home, she was driving me home, and I said, why don't you come upstairs? Again, God knows where I got this nerve. She was a married woman. And she said, okay, I'll come upstairs if we can find parking. Now, the neighborhood I lived in at the time, Park Slope, there's no such thing as parking. There, it really does require divine intervention to get a spot. It was 9 o'clock at night. A car pulls out right in front of my house. Divine intervention. So, divine intervention. So she comes upstairs, and she's now an unfaithful spouse, and I'm having an affair with a married woman. And I tell this story because it started out as just we would sneak out once in a while, and one day we realized that we loved each other. And for me, this was a huge turning point in my life. Because I really didn't think I was ever going to fall in love. But I loved this woman really passionately, and she loved me. And everything was going beautiful. The day of the blackout in 1977, July 15th, I think it was, 1977, we cut work, and we strolled around, and we made love, and it was just great. And then I was going, for a very brief while, Carter made travel to Cuba legal. So I was going to Cuba July 16th to July 30th, 1977. So it was a great trip. I come home, and the Monday at work, I'm looking for Genevieve. No sign of her. The next day, no sign of her. The next day, no sign of her. Turns out, while I was away, she told her husband, who made her quit the job. So, she had still worked for another couple of weeks. We managed to sneak off together during that time. And then somehow I managed to get in touch with her where she was living. And so I borrowed my parents' car, and I drove to see her. And she, she was miserable. Her marriage was a horrible one. She was miserable. And I said, you never ever should have done this to us. We could have been happy together. And you're coming with me. And what I did was, I said, which drawers are yours? And she took out a suitcase and I loaded all of her clothing in a suitcase. And I said, if I have to, I'm going to carry you, but you're coming home with me. And she got in the car. We drove home. I took her to meet my parents. And then the next morning, she called her husband. And I never saw her again. But, the upside was I'd been in love. So there was at least that, and it also gave me like all kinds of confidence, otherwise I was doing really well. So one of the reasons that I went to film school was because I wanted to make a film about me and Genevieve. Okay. So I went to film school, didn't really work out for me. I think I spoke about it, and I moved to France. And I had an apartment in Paris. I subletted an apartment of somebody, a wonderful guy, who was working doing his military service in the French consulate or the French embassy in Hague. And while he was he was a single guy, and he had a girlfriend, Rosaline. And so, when he'd come home from Holland, he'd bring Rosaline with him. And I didn't speak French. Your question was about what French. I was learning French while I was in France. I was going to see American movies subtitled in French and reading them, which was really the main way I did. Okay. And so anyway, so one night, it was a weekend, and Paras and Rosaline were in Paris, and they were going to a party with a bunch of people who they'd introduced me to. So we go to the party, and it's nice. It's in a really nice part of Paris. And I'm sitting in a chair, and this story is a true story, Andy. I swear by all that's holy, because I cannot believe this story actually is part of my life. So I'm sitting in a chair, and Rosaline was a very attractive, slightly older woman, probably 10 years older than me. So I was 25. And so I'm sitting in a chair at this party, and Rosaline sits against my shins. Now, she didn't speak a word of English. So I was like struggling, but I was doing okay speaking French to her, because now I had no choice. And so she's sitting against my shins, and then she reaches up and she takes my hand and she starts sucking on my fingers. Doesn't matter what language you speak. That's clearly a sign. I felt pretty safe that it was a sign. So the two of us leave the party. We leave the party, we leave behind her boyfriend, all the friends and everything. And we have this wild night in Paris, on the street, making love on the streets of Paris. Again, I don't believe this is my life. I don't believe it. Somehow somebody else's life was parachuted into this moment of mine. And then it ended. She went back to Holland. All of her friends, who were my friends, they all, of course, dropped me because they figured out what had gone on. It was really terrible, but it was really quite something. But I wanted to see her again. So I had this, it was an era where it was very easy to make reservations, cancel reservations. So I had like a return flight to Holland. So I said, you know what, I'll come back, and I told her I'll come back and see. Somehow I got in touch with her. She calls me though in Brooklyn and says, don't come. I said, no, I have the reservation. Everything's all set. I've sublet I'm coming. Okay. So I fly. I then have to take the train from wherever the plane landed to The Hague. And there at the train station waiting for me is Rosaline with her husband, who I didn't even know existed. So it turns out she had multiple boyfriends for various places and times. Well, obviously, I can't stay with her because she's married, living with her husband. And she tells me, look, I have a friend, and she's just left her husband. She's living with another guy. She's French, and her boyfriend lives and works on the German border during the week, only comes home on the weekend. They said you could stay during the weekend, you got to fend for yourself. Okay, works. So I meet her, and she's this beautiful young French woman, beautiful, 24 years old, long black hair, beautiful woman. And Catherine is her name.
Mm.
And so, we were hanging out together. So during the week, about the second or third day that I'm staying with her, and every day I'm meeting her, she worked at the French Institute. So I went to meet her, and they were showing one of my favorite French films at the time, a film called Les Rendezvous d'Anna by Chantal Akerman. It's a terrific film, kind of rigorous, film. But so I took the team to see it. Let's go to see this film. It's showing in The Hague. Let's go see it. We walk out of the theater, and she tells me she loved it. And I said to myself, at that moment, I knew in 3 days, I'm marrying this woman. She's beautiful, she's French, and she loves Les Rendezvous d'Anna. What more could a man want in life? And sure enough, a year later, we got married. It's a little bit complicated. I'm leaving out all the intermediate steps. Okay, we got married. But here's what happens also. A few years ago, Les Rendezvous d'Anna was showing on one of the cable stations here. And I told Pascal, Catherine, our son, you need to watch this film. Because had there been no, had your mother not loved Les Rendezvous d'Anna, there would be no Pascal. So he says, I got something to tell you. I said, what? He goes, she hated it. She told me she just wanted to impress you. She hated it. So is there any wonder that we ended up getting divorced? We got married on false pretenses. We got a son out of it, but we never should have got married. Anyway, so the marriage, Catherine, the marriage, lasted 7 years, 8 years. It was really good until it wasn't. There was like pressures and stresses all along. Pascal was born, and that was it. Because Pascal didn't sleep through the night first till he was 3 years old. So you have like a marriage that's falling apart, and then you have a kid where you can't sleep. We didn't see Rem from 1984 to 1987. And one day what happened was things were going badly. We were just, we were fighting all the time. But really all we did was just didn't talk to each other. And then one day, Catherine said to me, you know what? You have your books, you have Pascal, and you have the Houston Astros. What do you need me for? And I realized she was right. So, exit Catherine. Now we've had a wonderful divorce, I have to say. Neither one of us ever says anything bad about the other. When I was sick last year, she called all the time. So, and we got Pascal. So, and then, so that was 1987. And I had, a variety of girlfriends, some better than others, some, I don't know what the hell I was thinking, this nut job, beautiful French new ager that I have no idea what the hell I was ever doing with. We would have a wonderful day together, and then she'd have a dream that night, and she wouldn't return my phone calls, because in her dream I had revealed myself to be a horror. And then there was another woman, very nice woman, a Brazilian, who was the first woman who was ordained a rabbi. What the hell I was doing with a rabbi is beyond me. And so there was a period, so this was like 2000. It's like the fall of 2000. And, I just, I wasn't seeing anybody. And I was supposed to go to see a film with a friend. We went to the New York Film Festival. He was part of a couple that I really loved. And after the film, Tony and I were going to go meet his wife for dinner. And I loved this couple. And I never saw them because weekends, they had a house in the country. They were never there. I was really looking forward to an evening with them. And then my closest friend called me up. And he goes, listen, I got invited to a Rosh Hashanah dinner. And there's too many women, not enough men. And I said, yeah, your point being, I got plans. He goes, you got to come. I said, no. He said, there's going to be girls. I said, look, anybody who's celebrating Rosh Hashanah is not for me. So I don't care how many girls are going to be there. This ain't for me. Come, you got to come. I said, no. Yeah. He said, come, you got to go. I said, all right, I'll go. So I decided to go. And it was a very nice evening. And sure enough, there was a lot of girls, single. And so there were like a couple of them going, which one of these do I make, my target for the evening? And the woman who was hosting it, it was in her loft. She had a loft in Chelsea. She was an artist, and she was just like the sweetest person in the whole world. And the apartment was decorated with her paintings, which were all word-based.
Yeah.
And so I looked at all the paintings. They were really interesting. And then, of course, I did what somebody like me has to do. I looked at her bookshelves. Yeah. And I saw that there were a lot of books by Gertrude Stein. So I go over to her and I said, Joan, these paintings are really great. I'm like sensing the influence of Gertrude Stein. Well,
you operator.
There we go. So now I'm like, things are going okay. Now, at the time, something we've not discussed, and we probably won't discuss, is that I was for many years also a musician. Mm-hmm. And I used to play in a Brazilian samba band. And we performed every Saturday night from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. At a club in Greenwich Village. So the dinner was nice. I really liked Joan. And so when the party ended, it was like midnight. So I still had 2 hours to kill. What the hell am I going to do for 2 hours? So I hate to do dishes. I hate it. I hate it. Like when my heart was acting up, I used that, hon, I would really like to do the dishes, but I really can't. So Joan was doing the dishes. I said, you know what, I'll help. Now, she had no idea that I'm doing it because I can't go anywhere anyway. I'm doing the dishes. So I helped her do the dishes. And so now I know Gertrude Stein, and I've helped doing the dishes. Does a guy get any better than this? So then I get her phone number, and I used to have a great trick that can't be used anymore. Nobody likes to call and then have be rejected, right? You had to call somebody up and ask them out. Yeah. But there was a great way around it. In the era of answering machines, you leave a message. Yeah. If they call back, they're interested. If they don't call back, there you go. You haven't embarrassed yourself. Now, I knew Joan wasn't going to be home like a week later because it was Yom Kippur. So I called on Yom Kippur because I knew that she went to services and left a message. And she called back. Okay. So now, we're doing fine here. Here's where I make a false step. And, so I was going to visit a friend out of town, somebody I'd grown up with Pascal. And so we ended up speaking on the phone for a few weeks, like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, 2 weeks it was, before we could actually go out. So by the time we were going out, it was already like a second or third date because we'd spoken every night. Now, what do I choose to see on a first date? What else could somebody like me want to do but go to see the film The Confession about the Slansky trial in Czechoslovakia, where Yves Montand plays communist Arthur London, who's tortured all through the film. And Joan, very romantic. And Joan, on top of everything else, is claustrophobic. So in the scenes of the film, he's like in this tiny cell, or he's got black goggles on. And so Joan and I go to see this film. Oh, I'm sorry, there's one other thing. Before we go to see the film, we went out for Thai food. And I ordered pad Thai. Because it's noodles. I only eat noodles. But I don't like vegetables. And pad Thai's got tons of vegetables. So I'm picking out all the vegetables, and basically I'm eating nothing. So when we're done, the plate is full because I picked out all the vegetables. Joan later told me, you were so taken with me, you couldn't even eat. So, and she believed this for a long time. I mean, I was taken with her, but anyway, so we go to see this film, and she wants to run out, but she likes me. The film is horrifying her. She's like freaking out. But again, I made the best of a bad bargain, and she was so shaken that it gave me the opportunity to hold her and hug her and kiss her to console her. And so,
how gentlemanly.
First case. There we go. The first kiss. So then we started seeing each other, and we knew it was it immediately. In Yiddish, it's called a beshert. It's somebody who was like your predestined one. We were just crazy about each other, everything, the whole thing. And so it was like in December, we we started dating in October. In December, it was decided we'd get married. So I said, my first marriage, I can never really remember my anniversary because it was some like weird date in the middle of December. It had to do with visas because Catherine was French. So I said, let's get married on my birthday, February 2nd. This way I can't forget it. And she said, no, I have met my parents. So then I said, okay, let's get married on Bloomsday, the day when Ulysses takes place, June 16th. We both love James Joyce. She goes, no, my sister's getting married around that time. I said, okay, we got to find a date between February 2nd and June 16th when we get married. So I asked Pascal, find a weekend date that's memorable between February 2nd and June 16th. Looks at his calendar and goes, April Fool's Day. And that's what we did. We got married on April Fool's Day. So people all over who have crossed paths with all know to call me on April Fool's Day. So we got married and we did the ceremony. The ceremony is a very good story. When we met, Joan was friends with a rabbi. So we wanted he came over and we said, listen, Joan goes to services, I don't. We want to have a Jewish ceremony with no mention of God. He said, I've always wanted to do that. So we go through the marriage ceremony, and every place where God is mentioned, he takes it out. And he comes up with something else. It's a sure enough, our wedding ceremony. And also, I'm a big fan of the Karaites, which is a group split off from Judaism that doesn't believe in the Talmud, only the Bible. And I really like them. So our marriage ceremony, and also at the time I was an Esperantist. So our marriage ceremony was done omitting God from a religious ceremony, with parts of the Karaite ceremony, with vows done in Esperanto. And also we had it in Joan's studio, and so she made both the dress she wore, she looked magnificent, and the chuppah, the canopy. So we got off to a really good start, and it was in the background of a couple of the other interviews. Our ketubah, the Jewish marriage contract, is in English, Hebrew, and Esperanto. So okay, now, so we've had a wonderfully happy marriage. Neither of us has ever gotten over just the miracle of our having met. We're just, the happiest couple in the world. And one of the ways we've kept that up, and it's my secret for how to have a happy marriage, is when I met Joan, she kept her studio in Chelsea. And 2 nights a week, she stayed there. So we weren't together 7 days a week. We weren't tripping over each other every day. She had time to do her art. I had time to, go to see films or just read without feeling the little bit of guilt that I now feel. And then when she lost that studio, she got another one. And even now, in the middle of COVID, she goes, 1 night and 2 days to her studio in a part of Brooklyn that takes as long to get to as it is from New York to St. Louis. But, and so for every time, so when we're together, it's because we want to be together. And when both of us, and I say this sincerely, as hokey as it sounds, that both of us, like when she comes home from work, I'm excited to see her coming through the door. And when I come home from whatever I've done, which is almost nothing, it's kind of like you want just as soon sit home. It's the same thing. And during the nice weather, I sit out on our front porch so that I can see her a few minutes earlier or a few seconds earlier than waiting for her to come through the door. So, all of that starts with kissing Sherry Dubner in a closet, because none of it, there's decision points all along the way. There's stuff that could have happened, had I gone to dinner with my friends. Joan's a beautiful woman. She would have met somebody else. I might have fallen in love with the waitress. Who knows? Had I gone on with my friends, but we didn't. Everything happens not because it was meant to happen. Everything happened because it happened. Nothing could be changed because whatever happens, happens, and that's it. But none of it happens without every individual step, that led up to it. So it goes from Nadine Miller's closet in the basement to our house here a mile away from Nadine Miller's basement.